Hey gamers! Do you all think someone was projecting when they made Cloud and Sephiroth swords? It's Jason.
I'm the years of therapy you'll need after being read to filth by GLaDOS in Portal 2. Casey.
Just when you thought you won the last battle and beat the game, the one who is pulling the strings all along appears, a god with limitless power. And his name? It's me, Patrick. Welcome to RPGaymer Season 3, Episode 1, a podcast about video game villains.
Boo!
Okay. That was cute. I was like, where are you going for this?
Gamers, we are back for Season 3 of our podcast. It is about damn time. Damn time.
Are we getting Lizzo on this podcast?
I wish.
Surprise!
Surprise! It's Lizzo.
But not to brag or anything, but we might have some really cool special guests this season, which you'll have to stick around and find out for when that actually happens. Hopefully next week. So yeah, we have a lot of changes coming up in Season 3. We'll continue to expand and grow as much as possible. One of the big changes, though, this season is that we're actually hoping to monetize our videos. So yeah, that basically means we can't swear anymore without censoring it. And to be funny, this time we thought every time we swear, we're gonna do a little sound bite of Link from Legend of Zelda. So, for example, we can't say fuck or shit anymore.
That also means we can't say sucking either.
And we definitely can't say you god toast eating.
So stick with us as we venture into this new territory. Moving on, we're going to talk about villains today, and we may be RPGaymer, but we play a lot of other games too. So we're actually going to open the discussion up to all villains in all video games. Mm-hmm. So, because this is such a broad topic, why don't we talk about the different types of villains we see?
I feel like everyone has mental health problems.
It all stems from that.
Running.
Yeah, it all.
Yes.
Hey, mental health is important, guys.
It
okay?
is, yes.
It is, and they don't get any help.
Yeah. How many problems could be solved if they were just like, do you want to talk about it? And then they could talk it out and it would be okay.
Do you want some Xanax?
Exactly.
Some Wellbutrin?
I do agree with you, and I feel like that's kind of where the baseline villain came from. Like back in the early days of games, it was just like, I'm going to be evil for no apparent reason other than I wasn't hugged as a child, and then like they just do their thing where like
you think so? I think older villains are more like evil and like it wasn't just like I am just a chaotic force because, and now it's a little bit more like oh, you didn't get hugged by your dad enough, you know?
It is like that. I'm thinking like you're talking like old like Bowser and stuff. Like he's just kind of evil and he has no real reason to be evil other than he's just evil. But I feel like if you just talk to him, he'd be okay. But nowadays you get more like complex where villains have like, plots and reasons behind what they're doing.
I think that's fair. Like with the Bowser thing, I feel like a lot of that generation's like platforms, they were all just very archetypal cookie cutter villains that kind of all had the same motivations.
Well, what were some of those archetypes though? Because I think if we kind of root in what some of these bigger ideas are, it might really like illuminate some of the other things we're talking about. Because there are so many different types, like we talked about just evil forces or evil deities or evil kings, but it's not always something like that. Like sometimes the villain is like a secret sibling, you know what I mean? Like it's an anti-hero or it's a rival. Or even sometimes it's like, if you think of something like Resident Evil 4, it's a group of people. Right. It's a societal, force. It's not just like one specific villain. It's like a whole expansion. So it's like there's so many different types of villains.
Yeah, I think what I'm thinking of when we first start with villains, it's usually some sort of like other in a sense. Like this is an evil alien, or we said Bowser is this huge evil reptile man. Or it's just a force of evil that's doing bad things, like early Final Fantasy games do that. And it is explained like it's some god or deity or something, but like I don't know, it just seemed very baseline, and I wonder if it's because the consoles couldn't do more than that. Like, so you had to kind of make it up, or God help you read it in a manual when you got the game to find out what was going on.
Like, it was just easier to program a villain to be an evil thing than it was to just like have to figure out, okay, how are we going to make this much character fit in with this much RAM? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And like you would see the cues later, like, oh, their palace is covered in spikes and fire, like they must be bad. And like, so you get it that way, but it doesn't really give you reasons why. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna accept from past norms that this must be a bad guy.
Okay, so we talk about villains and we talk about how, you know, like early games it was just evil, but do you think that all villains really do fit in that category of just evil?
No, definitely not. I think like the best villains honestly don't fit in that at all. Like, I think if you can shove someone in, you're a bad guy because you're a bad guy, that's almost kind of bad. That's a lot of bads. It's kind of the worst because like you want them to be more than that. Like the villain eventually starts to make the character, the main protagonist, like better by what they are, and like maybe a foil or some sort of relation to them. And like that's what makes the better villain. It's when they have a kind of driving force that pushes them forward besides just being evil, and it's usually made better by the protagonist that you play as.
I actually taught this in English class when we talk about like heroes and antagonists and villains and whatnot, and how, you know, if you think of Pokemon, you have Gary, who is like in some capacity a villain because he's a rival.
Your rival, yeah,
right. And he's an evil, like not evil rival. He's like douchey. He's evil in that sense. But then you have people like Team Rocket, where, you know, they're technically supposed to be the evil bad guys, but in some capacity they're really just a foil to the main character. So it's like there are so many varieties of villains, and you know, if you look at Team Rocket and Gary, they're not really either one of them are actually evil. Like Team Rocket really doesn't, they try to do bad things, but like at the core they're really not bad.
Yeah, I think
specifically Jesse and James, not like the entirety of Team Rocket, but
yeah, you're touching on something, and I thought of too when researching for this, where I feel like some villainy might come down to incompetence, where it's just like they're silly for what they do, and that's why they're bad.
And sometimes those are the best villains.
Yeah, those are really fun, especially for Casey saying earlier, like platformers. Like, how are you going to explain Dr. Robotnik is like evil when all he does is make little animals into robots? Like, I mean, it's like it could be bad, but like in the early days,
that's pretty evil though. Like,
it is pretty evil, and like if you look at it now, it's like, wow, he's like trying to take over the universe. But back on the Genesis, like, no, it was hard to do that.
I think sometimes too, it's a matter of perspective. Like, not sometimes villains want revenge, but it's can really look at the villain and why they want it, and just because they're trying to kill you or attain their goal, it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. So I think like The Last of Us, where I think in both games there's someone who is looking to kill the main characters, and they're justified in why they're doing it, and it's not necessarily a matter of, you know, like they're evil people, you know. So sometimes it's survival, sometimes it's like, well, you did this, so I have the right to get revenge, and because what you technically did was a bad thing. So it's kind of like his gray area a lot.
I think I was literally about to say it's very gray, especially in those games.
I think the great philosopher of our time, Shrek, put it best in that the best villains are like onions, and they have layers, and when you peel back these layers, you get a better overall story.
Real question is, are you Shrek or are you Donkey?
Wait, what is this question even? Is this a weird thing I don't know about? Before I answer, I don't want to answer this.
No, I'm there's nothing there. It just,
I don't know. I guess I'm Shrek.
Not my gumdrop buttons. You're a monster.
You're a monster. Oh my god. Anyways. So speaking of onions and villain layers, what would make a villain a good villain? And I mean like a good villain in that we like them in the game. They don't necessarily need to be doing good things or altruistic things, but like, why is that villain like, oh, that is the best villain?
My favorite villains are like the really completely ridiculous, over the top, like when I first saw we were doing this episode, granted I played it recently, but GLaDOS, like she's probably one of my favorite villains, like in all of villains. She's just completely unhinged. She's I don't think all villains like need to be funny, like most aren't, but it's so nice to see such like a really evil bitchy person, or I guess machine AI, have this crazy sense of humor that just like reads you to filth.
Well, I mean, I think even to take that further than just, like being funny, I think just having depth is really what, you have those villains who are just, I am evil, hear me roar. And they're not really that interesting, but you have the villains who, they have those layers, like Jason was just saying, where they have the comedy side to them and they're evil, or they have goals that are developed, like Kuja and Kefka are interesting villains because there's just so much more to them, and you see them go through changes throughout the game. So I think I'm there with you when it's just like, it's not just chaos, it's like chaos and
and I think it's important, especially like with Kefka and Kuja, that their motivations are really clear, that we kind of know what they're aiming for. And I think that especially if the motivations have some sort of like a backstory where you kind of see where those motivations came from, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I was actually going to say the exact same thing. Motivation is one of my big things for a good villain. And I think aside from like it making sense with how they get to where they're going, it also makes sense to me to see it logically progress in the game. So as I am playing, I'm seeing like, okay, they did this one thing and now they're on to the next thing. Like it makes sense to me, but if it goes from one to something I was like, how did this even happen? Like it doesn't really make sense to me. So
I kind of thought that too. I thought that too. Like I kind of coined them as slow grow villains, or maybe like unexpected villains, where they're on the same level as you, whether that's like power wise in like some really superficial sense, or in like developmentally or complexity, and versus like just your powerful deities, because it's hard to relate to those characters that are just like omnipotent right off the get-go. But like when they slow grow and like it's a race for time between like you accomplishing your goal and them accomplishing their goal, but it's still like fair and interesting. I think you get a lot more out of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that when someone is so far beyond you, you can't really do what we were talking about before, where like the villain complements the hero in like an opposite end way. It's a completely different line or column that they're in, and like that could be okay, but I think personally it's not really what I go for.
I think it depends on the game too, because if we're talking about RPGs, in some capacity it's cool to have that depth, but if we're not talking about RPGs, sometimes having nothing explained about the villain makes for a good villain. So like Slenderman's terrifying, and he's a great villain in a game, but you don't really know anything about him.
He dresses really nice. That's what I got.
Right. And so I think that's what makes him a really good villain, is the unknown. And it really upsets me when TV series and video games try to over explain something. I mean, we were talking about Stranger Things season 4 and how, like now that the villain has a name and a purpose and everything like that, it's less, to me it was less interesting, where when the things going on in the Upside Down were so much better when you didn't know, and as a part of like the mystery. So that's kind of how I feel about like this too, where sometimes it's just better not to know, and like the evil is just the evil. But it depends on the game, because that wouldn't work in an RPG.
I agree with like RPG villains. The good ones, in my opinion, they always seem to be, first off, they're like immediately stronger than you, and that like usually sets off like the why I'm going to go like level up and kill people. But I think that they always have like a starting motive that is usually like the antithesis of what your character wants or does, or they just blow up your village. Like, so it's like that's what usually happens. And then if you compare it to like non-RPG villains, it's kind of like you were saying, Patrick, it is a force or deity that's just there and evil, or it's something silly like we mentioned Dr. Robotnik, like he's taking over the planet. It's just something completely different that it just kind of happens to be, oh, I'm part of this too, I'm going to stop it as the main character, as opposed to I have a driving force because they murdered my mother or something like that. And I usually find that difference in RPGs.
Yeah, I would say RPGs are pretty heavy-handed with sort of those kinds of backstories. I also think I like sometimes when a game is good at making you sympathize with a villain. I don't feel like a lot of games are super successful, but I think because there are a lot of people in games who have terrible things happen to them, but they are the hero of the game. So it's cool to see when they give you a good backstory like that, where you can kind of see the different path that they chose versus like they could have dealt with it and become like the hero, but you know, they ended up killing everyone and now want to rule the world.
What about when you have villains that appear over the course of a series? I think that is something that's really a cool characteristic. It kind of makes you appreciate them a little bit more. I know neither one of you have played the Phantasy Star series, but Dark Force is a reoccurring villain in I think all of them. I think he's like at least appears in all of them in some capacity and kind of the main villain in a couple. But just knowing that like here's a game where over the course of thousands of years the same villain keeps on popping up, and I really think it adds layers to the game. Not like expecting them to be there, but it's kind of like that oh shit moment. Wild Arms does the same thing, even though the games are like disjointed. They're all kind of parallel universes of each other. In the main villain of 1 appears as a chapter villain in 3.
Oh, okay.
And it like it was one of those things where had you played the older ones, you're just kind of like, oh my god, this is so cool, because there's never any mention of them before, why they're there, and all of a sudden this whole segment of the game is just completely about this villain, and then they get an arc within there. And I just think that's really cool, because it really, when you know the series well, or when you know a series well, it pays dividends, because you're just kind of like, oh snap, it's about to get real.
Yeah, I feel you on that one too. I think making my mind turn with that, Patrick. I feel like there's some series that have stayed for a long time can have unique approaches to villains, because they like might keep coming back. And I don't know why I thought about this, but the villain that came to mind is Shao Kahn from Mortal Kombat, where like he's in 2 as like the main bad guy, and he's in like 3. He keeps going, and his plan kind of gets foiled, and like you have people that come above him and below him in other games like as the main big bad, but like he's always kind of known as like this is the bad guy. And so like when you see him in a sub role, like in what was it, Mortal Kombat 9, like the remake one, he's kind of there, but someone else is pulling the strings later in Mortal Kombat 10. And like it just makes you feel differently about that character, because you're like, okay, he's supposed to be the big bad guy, but he's not strong anymore, and then suddenly, oh, he's strong again. And like you get this curves up and down. It's kind of neat, and it's unique in that you only get it since the character's there in multiple games.
And yeah, because so, you know him, because I mean, if you're coming in the later Mortal Kombats, it doesn't really have that impact.
Yeah.
It's like fighting cool, a super boss in like an RPG, and it's a super boss from 2 games ago, where like you're in Final Fantasy, you're like, oh god, it's a mega weapon, and when you see him in like Final Fantasy 12, but if you haven't played Final Fantasy 5, oh, cool. Then it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
You lose the context. So I think it's neat. Otherwise, it's just some guy wearing a skull mask that looks cool.
On the topic of the skull mask, what or how much importance is there with the appearance of a villain, do you guys think?
This is kind of like a spicy question for me. I think that I think the villain's look is important. No doubt about it. However, I think there are a lot of underdeveloped villains who get a pass because they look cool.
Sure.
And you gotta name names.
Sephiroth.
Okay. Yeah,
I think some people really fanboy over a lot of different villains because they look cool, but it's like they don't really do anything. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like they're just edgy, or they're cute, and like those types of things give them a pass. And I mean, sometimes that's serviceable, but like sometimes it's not. Like if you really look at it, it's like, okay, but why is this villain one of the greatest villains at all time? And you know, I'm sure all of us doing some work for this episode, getting ready to discuss what we're going to talk about, we looked at lists, and you probably looked at some of those lists and you're like, okay, but really this villain, like why is this guy on here? And it's like they just look cool, you know, they're well known and they look cool, or maybe the game itself was good, but the villain isn't necessarily what made it good. But what do you guys think? Who are some of your like? Do you think appearance matters?
I think it kind of matters. Like there's I don't know. I feel like as you're playing the game, like you want to kind of know like what your goal is, and if there's no direct villain, like because it hasn't been explained in the plot, then I expect to probably go back to those old characteristics of they have horns and fire, and everything around them is black, so they're probably evil. So like I have to have something.
Or their sword is 12 feet long.
Yes, exactly. Or their sword's way bigger than mine. What the fuck? So like I need to like be
it's
guided
about
that way.
Jason. Casey and I can tell you it is definitely more of a girth thing than it's a link thing.
Girth over length. Okay. I was assuming that was going there, but you took it there, so that's great.
I will always take it there.
I mean, look at the Buster sword.
Please don't change. But yes, I think that it does matter to some degree. I feel like otherwise, if there is no like visualization of the person being evil, and then like someone like your friend or party member becomes evil, like why though? Like there's like it doesn't really feel good to me. Like so there has to be something that like pays off in.
But does that mean that all villains need to be like dark aura and stuff like that? Because I think it's kind of cool when you have this unsuspecting villain where maybe they are a party member and they've been hiding it the entire time because they seem like they're a good human being, and like that adds the complexity where like they have their motivations and they just happen to hide them from you, as opposed to like, oh, that's a bad bitch. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I know that's a bad guy because, like you said, horns and fire and everything.
I guess to clarify more, like I think they can have like evil within themselves, and like it doesn't need to be outwardly projected in like purple and black auras coming out of them or something, but like it needs to be like shown in some way that, hey, this is intrinsically bad for this person to be doing, or it has great harm on someone else, then that's what defines them as the villain. And I like to have that. So like when it's not there, and I can only really think of like older video games that do this, it just seems like they're there because they have to be there, and there's no real reason to fight them.
I mean, you're probably never gonna finish Breath of Fire 3, right?
It's still in the PlayStation right over there, so maybe.
But you're probably well, because I was gonna spoil something of it so we could discuss, but
you can spoil it. It's been like 25 years.
Okay, yeah, it really has been. So like Tipo is a bad guy.
Okay.
And it's no surprise that Tipo is a bad guy because like you can contrast Ryu and Tipo, and like Ryu's this adorable kid who has this like really bashful, cute look, even though he can turn into a monster and obliterate
dragon.
things.
Yeah.
And Tipo can too, because Tipo is also a brood and can turn to dragons. But like that like this kid is going to be a bad guy at some point in the game just by looking at him, because he is edgy. Like he's got like dark purple vibes
purple
going
hair.
on.
Yeah.
Like you just
his
know,
eyes are too small.
Yeah, exactly. Like all of those things. So like I think appearance does play, but I don't like it when it's just so blatant. Because I mean, don't you like it when you get gooped a little bit from a game when you're?
Yeah, I want to get the goop.
Yeah.
So like that's like the point of the game. So like when it really delivers that way, it's good.
Okay, let's be vain for a second then, because I mean, I'm like, here I am all like, okay, this is doesn't need to look a certain way, but I also want to talk about weapons, because this is one of those things where you can gush a little bit and you're like, okay, that's kind of sick when a villain has a really cool weapon. Who are some of your? This is it. Like this is the guy.
I guess it's gonna be a cop out answer, but Sephiroth. I mean, he's like iconic.
It's iconic.
He's, you can't go wrong.
I will challenge you. I'm not gonna ever tell you your opinion is wrong. Okay, 100%. If you have your feelings, you have your feelings, and I respect that. But I will say, is there anything that his weapon delivers that like any other anime or with anybody with a katana? Yeah, I mean, like it's just a katana at the end of the day. So for me, that's why I'm not like, I would not be Sephiroth is at the front of the line. But respect, like I know you're a big Final Fantasy 7 fan, so
yes, I'm wearing a Cloud shirt right
which no one can see.
I think that for Sephiroth though specifically, like you could look at is it the Masamune? I think is what they call it. Like
I think
it's
so. Yeah,
an iconic weapon.
It is an iconic weapon.
Also, like it does like.
Across the series,
spoilers, it does like kill Aerith in that, so like maybe it's that too. Like you're thinking of the scene where like, oh, he did it with that weapon, and like that visually stands out. The standout weapon here is kind of the copy weapon of the protagonist. So like if they have something similar and it like fights you back, like they have the evil version, that kind of stands out as a cool weapon, because you can see like what did they do with that I can or cannot do. So to change it up and not talk about RPGs, I do like Mega Man. And so eventually you get into Proto Man, and later on, a lot of other villains have basically the same gun as you, and they can do similar stuff. And so seeing them fight you with basically your own weapon is kind of cool. And it's like, oh man, they're so much better than I am. And so like it sets the stage for what you want to achieve. So when you get to the end and you can finally overcome them with your new gained strength and skill in the game, it feels really good because you're like, now I've overtaken you. Like, I'm the better person at this weapon. And
so what you're saying is their weapon is cool because you suck at games and they're better at the gun than you are.
Well, actually, what I would say is it's a really good way to design the game, because if it's developed well, let's use Mega Man again, and we can look at Proto Man. Like, it shows you how you can jump and shoot effectively. Or later on in X, you have not a villain, but you have Zero with you as well, and they're showing you like, this is how you can effectively dash and move. It's showing you how to play the game better. And like you get through the game later and see like, this is how I can overcome these challenges. And I think that's a pretty solid way, especially in an older game where it's, again, harder to show like pop-up tutorials, like press X to continue. Like, you have to figure it out on your own. That sort of game design really stands out to me. But Patrick, what about you, man? Which ones come out to you?
Okay, so I know you guys don't get the reference, but talking about that one villain from Wild Arms, Siegfried, he has this really cool spear called the Glumzamber, and it is a hot topic in 2 of the games, which is why I think it's cool, where like in the first game it's just the villain's weapon, and then in the third game it's pieces that come together into the weapon, and then you don't actually know that's like what you're trying to stop people from collecting, and then you find out like it is the weapon, and then that's when that boss reappears and he's the bad guy, and it's just this really cool dark looking spear. But if I had to do like a non-RPG, 100% hands down, Dr. Robotnik's giant ball and chain is like, it's the most, this is when I fell in love with Dr. Robotnik, because it's the most obscene weapon, right? Like, you have this little hedgehog, you have all these cannons that you could build, or lasers, or literally like an evil hedgehog, but you're gonna go at him with this giant wrecking ball. Like, that is just hysterical to me.
I just imagine him like, oh yeah, this is gonna get him, and he's like moving his hands, and then it fails the first time, but he tries like 15 more times to be like, this time he's gonna fall for it.
Oh, it's so good. It's just so good. Okay, well, I think it's time for a quick break for some ads, but we will be right back. Hey gamers, it's me, Patrick. I wanted to take a quick second to tell you about Anchor by Spotify. It's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. As a matter of fact, making RPGaymer would be much more difficult without Anchor. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone, tablet, or computer, which means you don't need any fancy tools to get started. You can also collab with guests around the world without them needing to lift a finger. It's pretty much made our lives hassle-free. Anchor also distributes your podcast across all major listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so many more. You're actually listening to RPGaymer wherever you are because we put it on Anchor. It even tracks all kinds of analytics for you, so if you want to know who's listening, it can give you all kinds of data. If you're looking to level up your content, it really is everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. As a newer podcast, Anchor has made our lives so much easier. You have no idea. And best of all, it's totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us. We are talking about video game villains. And Patrick, Casey, what are some of the best villains you've seen in games?
So again, this is not limited to just like main villain. This is any villain from Okay.
Okay, I can start if we
let's volley back rolling. And forth. Yeah, let's get the ball rolling and just kind of volley it from there.
I think for me, some of the best villains are ones that have the most exciting story that I like to like encounter and like unroll. Just to name one I really liked, I'm a big fan of Fallout, and I don't know if someone's going to take this one, but the Master from Fallout 1 I thought was fantastic.
Oh, sure.
And I think it was cool because not only can you defeat them by not killing them, yada yada, all this stuff, but their plan was solid. Like, it made sense. It was wrong, but it made sense. It was fun. They were distinctly creepy. I felt satisfied when I defeated them. and like their impact in the world in the games later was still felt. So it felt like they were significant in that world, in building that world, I should say. And so they really stick out to me.
But for the time too, when that game came out, that was a very atypical villain.
Yeah.
It's usually like Smashley Simpson, like it's someone that you're trying to beat the shit out of. But like you said, you can logic this boss to beat him. And it was just a very different style of boss. So that's a cool boss. How about you, Casey?
It's maybe it's an easy answer, but Ganondorf, Legend of Zelda. There's so many different iterations. The lore in that series is it's almost like it's like Kingdom Hearts level, but they don't talk about it in the actual game. It's like all through like superlative materials. But I just loved all the different iterations of him throughout the last few decades, and it was kind of harkening back to what you were talking about, Patrick, with Phantasy Star. That was kind of,
he's a recurring villain.
Yeah, in Phantasy Star, is it the same like iteration of the person?
It is an actual like full on coherent timeline in the 4 games.
Okay.
So
yeah, because Ganon is kind of a different being almost in every time that he appears.
And then it depends on if it's like the Link died timeline or the Link lived timeline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like too, before we get to Patrick, because I want to hear what he wants to say, but with Ganon, and it sounds like with the Wild Arms enemy too, it seems like they're written in a way that again is logical to them coming back. Like it's not always just, hey, we're bringing back Dracula and Castlevania. Like it's the same thing over and over again. Or like freaking Dr. Wily, like why does he keep trying? So like with Ganon, it makes sense again because it follows again different timelines, but like logically this is what happens. He is the calamity now. Like he is a reincarnation. Someone else is summoning him into their body. Like it's all cool instead of just like, yep, it's another game, here's another Ganon, go have fun. So it's good that way. Patrick, what about you? We haven't heard from you yet.
Okay, yeah, we got my man. We got Bowser.
Oh
yeah. Bowser, I think, is one of the most likable villains.
He's hilarious.
Well, yeah, and I think that's why like you see him as like really mega evil or adorably sweet, well-rounded character, and I think that's why he's so great is because there are just so many different interpretations of him, and sometimes like he's a great verbal villain and a great non-verbal villain because they've given him so many different personalities. Like sometimes it really
games,
and like some games he doesn't talk, and in some games he does, and regardless, like he still expresses and emotes a lot. Part of that's because of the like any of the RPG Marios. I think it's great. I don't understand why Bowser doesn't have his own game, and I do appreciate the games where you get to play as him and he is a good guy. Even if he started as a bad guy, like Super Mario RPG or Super Paper Mario, or any of those games, I think it's great. So like Bowser's up there, like legit. I just think he's wacky, but he has a lot of depth too. Yes, Bowser.
I feel you. Can't go wrong with Bowser. He's a classic. He's been around forever. He's going to be in a new movie this year, voiced by Jack Black. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I think they picked a good one for him. I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
I agree. I think it's hitting the nail on the head. I feel like because Jack Black is typically funny, and like Bowser is kind of funny. It's a kids movie, so it makes sense.
Okay, who else? Because I mean, like, it's not like it's just a best villain. Like, there have to be more villains you like, right?
I like, and I guess it's across the series in Resident Evil Umbrella. I know it's more of like a corporation, and obviously each game has its own villain, but I think Umbrella kind of as a whole.
Chris!
What did you say? Oh,
Chris!
Yeah, you yelled too loud.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, I think Umbrella just, I mean, I'm like a Resident Evil stan, but I love what they're slowly, like, I mean, the series is very drawn out, but I think they're doing, as we're getting further in with 7 and 8, though I guess you haven't played those, but the lore and Umbrella, like, there's just a lot of really good things going on that I'm excited about, because it started out kind of simple as just like a pharmaceutical company, and now it's turned into something much larger.
I think for this one too, I wanted to take like a little bit different approach and not talk about like the big bad for the games, but I have some like comfort villains, if you will, that I like to see come through multiple games. And just to pick one, I haven't played too many of these, but I do enjoy Dragon Quest, and I like seeing slimes. Like when they're there, they're cute and funny, and like yeah, they're I guess technically bad, but they could be good. But I think like that sort of iconic villain in what it is, not being a huge Sephiroth enemy or something like that, it's still kind of cool. And like I expect to see it in those games. And when they're there and they have multiple varieties, and then they get kind of tough, like later on in the game, like it feels kind of fun. It's almost like yeah, like, oh, I'm coming home. I feel comfortable slaying this cute monster.
It's almost like we need to do a discussion on iconic things in video games and like talk about that, because there are so many things, like we were talking about iconic Final Fantasy weapons with the Masamune, or iconic villains. You could do like the Goombas or blue slimes. You know what I mean? Like what makes them iconic? But yeah, like it's always nice when you see them.
Yeah, it just feels good because it again, like if you've played it multiple times, you know, like, oh, they're back. Like I can kill you so easily. But like it just feels good. Something about like coming back and like you have a little bit of fan service and.
So I think this is for my RPG homies. But Zed from Wild Arms 1 is great because he's an anti-hero. He is that villain in a cast of very serious villains where you have someone who is on the goofier side. And one of the things I really appreciate about him is he has his own hype track when you fight him, like because he has his
like
own boss
musical track.
Yeah, like all the other boss music is just like very serious and like end of the worldy, but when you fight him, it's just like, I'll play it for you later. It's just a really fun hype track, and it makes him very endearing in a lot of ways because he's just this goofy half demon, half human swordsman. And in one of the games, like the remake of the first one, he's recruitable, so they even went even further of like he was so likable and well received that you can get him. The other villain I think is really cool, and I don't think he gets talked about enough. Are you guys speaking in two people? I know, Casey, you're not.
No, not. I'm familiar. I've read a lot about it for like work stuff, but yeah, I haven't played.
So everyone usually would say like Luca Blight is the best villain in the game, and he appears on a lot of super great villain lists, and I won't deny that because I mean like he is kind of terrifying, but your best friend from the beginning of the game is the main villain.
Oh wow.
And I think that is great because it really develops over the course of the game, and it really is just a matter of you guys having differing perspectives. Like it's not, it's like it's war, and eventually he ends up like going to the other side of the war, and he's not an evil person, but like he still wants to
on the opposite
side.
But
he's on the opposite side, and he is a smart human being, and like there's a lot of logic to what he does, but you have him for the first like third of the game with you, and you really care about this character. Yeah, so Suikoden 1 and 2 does a really good job of making you feel for characters.
It's legit. I feel like maybe you guys can correct me here. Did they announce a remake of that or
the first two are being remastered.
Yeah,
that's good because Suikoden 2 is just way too expensive, so I will never buy it.
It has always been way too expensive too.
Yeah,
that's not even a recent thing. That's been like 15 20 years. Yeah,
I think since before I even knew you, Patrick, it was hella expensive.
Yeah, and I had it then too.
Oh, jealous.
Okay, so we talked about those we like. What about the derpy ones? Who do we not think is developed well?
I kind of alluded to this earlier when I was talking about like platformer villains, but like King K. Rool, Dr. what's his name, Neo Cortex. Like I think there are levels to them, but like especially like King K. Rool, he's just kind of there.
He's got cool music.
Yeah, and I think those games are super fun, but I just think kind of like almost what you were saying earlier with like there's just not enough ways to like fit information on the literal cartridge. I think as Donkey Kong and the series has gone further, there's a little more nuances with the villains, but not overly so.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel you. I think one of the ones that stands out to me, it's probably because I was talking about Fallout 1, but I didn't like Fallout 2, and then the future of the series is approached with the Enclave. I just felt like it was boring. It's just like a military branch of the government, and like it could be the president of the United States, like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But like it's just not well written, and it just didn't feel good, and it's just that they were powerful and strong. And contrasting that to the Master, who has a plan that makes sense for like the Wasteland, and he is again trying to do what he thinks is correct, and it could be like on paper, but it's involves killing millions of people, and that's terrible. But with the Enclave, it just felt like they kind of phoned it in, and were like they're just gonna have big guns and armor, and it felt more military shooty like. I didn't like that.
Yeah, I see what you mean there, where it's kind of the expected villain. Like you could see that villain in any other game.
Yeah. Like expectations were high. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see what's next. And I'm like, oh, that was it. And like, I'd rather it just be a giant rad scorpion instead of the Enclave.
Well, and it can be. So this is where we get canceled. But I mean, I already said it, Sephiroth. I just think it's really lazy design. I think people hype him up a lot, but I don't think the first game is really well written enough, and he's barely there. It's just they did a really good job of like fueling the energy of when he's present, and he would pop in and do crazy stuff, but like I really couldn't tell you much about him aside from he's mama's boy, and you know what I mean? Like I really don't think there's much depth to him. Wesker from Resident Evil is another one where I think it was a lot of lost potential. Like I think he's cool, but when you start to factor in Resident Evil 4 and 5, I think it's just really weird. Like it's when it got weird, where it's more like Resident Evil 1. It's a little bit better. And then Ganon, sorry, Casey.
Oh, you're good.
Like I think like Ganon is the polar opposite to Bowser for me, where like Ganon is just the same in every game, and I don't necessarily think that you should need like outside sources for a character to be interesting, where you have a character like Bowser who is very different in a lot of different games and depending on it. So I just like I love Legends of Zelda, like it's one of my favorite series, but sometimes I like the games where Ganon isn't the main villain because you don't really know
you don't know what to expect.
You don't know what to expect.
Really, really different.
Yeah.
I think if we're keeping on the I'm disappointed from one game to another train, and shifting gears to fighting games, I really didn't like Seth from Street Fighter 4 as a
he's dumb. He's so dumb.
And he follows
That's a terrible name.
Yeah, right. It could be someone's listening. If your name is Seth, we love you and appreciate you, and we're sorry.
No,
but like he's following M. Bison, who is like iconic, and he's kind of following Gil, who's kind of a bitch on himself on his own, but like he's also kind of iconic. And then you get this guy who just doesn't deliver, and like, oh my gosh, it was not a good one. So again, disappointment from expectations being set and then disappointed.
I remember us watching the anime of that in college, and I was like, this guy is just dumb.
He's dumb, and his motivation is also dumb. We won't get into it because I could rant for a while, but I'm like, nah, man, this is not it.
Well, speaking of motivations, because you were talking about like how this guy is just kind of purposeless compared to the other villains, do you think the goal of the villain is the most important thing, or do you think that their characteristics are the most important thing? Because we talked about like who we like and who we don't like. So what's that kind of common trend now about what makes them best?
Yeah, I think for me, I would definitely lead towards the goal is what is important. Like, I don't really care how many cannons and guns they have. Like, I would want their plot to be like what is the standout. Like maybe to your point, Patrick, about Sephiroth, like his plot is okay. Like it's, dastardly, but it just seems kind of non-fleshed out. And like instead he is edgy and has a big sword. But like if we're thinking about villains that have a better goal and are written better, like I guess you could say it's Atlas or Fontaine in BioShock, or Andrew Ryan. Like that's a much better thing for me to follow. I'd rather have the story develop where I really want to defeat this person, and as the game keeps going I'm like, yeah, I really fucking want to defeat him. That's better than just being like, yeah, they have a bigger sword than I do.
See, it kind of depends on how you look at it, because I kind of agree with you, but I kind of don't. Where I think if it's a good goal, it is really important. But if you look at it, he just wants power and control, which I think is just like a very based goal. So I think it's the fact that his characteristics and how he dupes you is kind of like they're good characteristics, like treachery, and whatnot, that really make him a more interesting character.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it makes sense. And I feel like at a base level, like every villain's goal is going to be something at fault. Like that's kind of why they're a villain or misunderstood or something. But yeah, when you strip away everything else, it does become that. And I can see that.
Yeah. Okay. So because we were talking about goals, were there any villains who accomplished their goal?
So Patrick, I don't remember. I think you beat it this summer because you also got Live Alive, Live Alive.
Yeah.
There are multiple endings in that game, and one of them, there's a couple. One, like the whole world gets destroyed, Armageddon happens, and then there's another bad one where you play as the bosses you have beaten and kill the characters you've controlled in the game. So obviously, it's almost like there are multiple endings, so there is a way to achieve a good ending where the villain loses.
No, but that's still legit. Like it is a perspective that you don't get to see very often.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool. They do in Persona 2. There's an ending where in Persona 4 where you can like you figure out who the murderer is, but then you say you won't tell anybody, and then the game ends, and it's kind of silly, but
sad.
Or you can just completely get it wrong.
Yes, that too, and then. Yeah,
I literally watched someone on stream who may or may not have been on our podcast at some point completely whiff who the perpetrator was, and on stream, and everyone's like, no, don't pick that person.
I hope you have a save.
Yeah, hopefully.
Go back.
I think for me, I think a big one is Ganon, and it's only because they chose to make multiple timelines where he did win, and like you go down that timeline, so it's a little cheesy because it's kind of like, did he really win or not? But it's a smart way.
But in one timeline, he does. Like,
yeah, in one timeline he does. It's a neat way to see that. Another one too that I think is similar in that it's kind of basically a timeline, and I'm not super duper familiar if this is exactly it. But in going back to your Mega Man series, I think the Mega Man Zero series, Sigma wins, and like the Sigma virus comes out and ruins all the Reploids, like the robots.
Hang on. It's Sugma.
Oh my god, Jeff. So anyways, like when you play that series, like the world is post-apocalyptic because robots are like villainous everywhere. And so like it's kind of neat that's what happened. But again, similar to Ganon and Zelda timeline, it chose to split where like, hey, what if they did win? So that stood out to me.
Patrick? Yeah, so Lavos from Chrono Trigger to me is a good villain because technically he does accomplish his goal.
Yeah.
And when you travel to the end of time in the future, you see the result of it. Yeah. Which I know, I mean, Casey, you played enough of that, right? Like, you know.
Yeah, I've gotten really close to beating it.
And then Jason, you've played Chrono Trigger?
Yeah, I haven't played Cross, and I heard he's in Cross too, so I don't know if there's a connection there. Okay.
That's rough. We won't go there.
Okay, yeah.
But in Trigger, like, you literally, like, I know you prevent it and wins, so you could say, like, well, he doesn't technically, but, like, technically he does. Like, technically, if you had never been able to travel into the future, like, you see him destroy the planet, like, it's gone, and everyone is just on the brink of destruction. So I think that's pretty legit. And I think that kind of makes it interesting because, you know, it's that sense of despair. Like, I don't like it when bad guys win. Unfortunately, you can do something to change it, but you really do get to experience it. The same thing in Dragon Quest XI.
Yeah, it's true.
Like
that one. Oh my god.
Yeah, a game we both played, and you've actually played all the way through.
Wow.
You know, there's the timeline in Dragon Quest XI where literally like bad guys win,
they won.
like they technically destroyed the world, and now you basically go and defeat them after the fact. And yes, of course, again, like Chrono Trigger, you can go back and change that if you want to do the true ending. But the canon ending is they won, and now you're dealing with it.
I do like that in Dragon Quest XI, you could just choose to stop at the end there where they win, and you're just kind of like, well, guess we fucked up, and like the game just rolls credits, and you could choose to be done, which I think is
it is the canon ending, and I think they knew they had such a long game, like
the folks that want to duck out halfway through, they can get the shit ending.
Yeah.
Do y'all think that a villain who succeeds like midway through, kind of like Kefka, like he does succeed? Obviously, you end up beating him at the end, and you know a lot more about 6 than I do, Patrick. But I mean, he does succeed at one point, and a lot of time passes. Do you think that counts, or only when it's like an ending?
I think it has to count. I think it needs to, because otherwise, like, you're never really going to play a game where like you as the protagonist go through and like just are supposed to lose, and like
those games are just so few and far between.
Yeah, there's not too many of them, so I think that's the only way. And to be honest, I think everything we just described about villains that did it, that's how we described it, and I think that counts, because I feel like
his goal was become God, and
he basically did that. Yeah,
he did become God. So I think, like, you're right. Like it does count because they still accomplish their goal. It just there happens to be more of a story that you get to keep going with.
So Kefka is kind of unique in that in all 18 million Final Fantasy games, I feel like he's the only villain at the end of the game that is actually still the villain from the beginning of the game. Usually it's some other deity or god, like Patrick was saying at the beginning of this podcast. So what do you all think about that? Do you feel upset? Do you feel betrayed? Or like, I don't know, the rug was swept out from under you? What do you think?
I think it depends on how far into the game you are. Like, I think if you're at the very end and they're like, gotcha, it's not,
it wasn't Kuja at all.
It wasn't fun. But like I brought up Phantasy Star 4 earlier, or like another game is Grandia 2, where you defeat what you think is the main villain halfway through, and then you find out that like it's not. So I think it's a lot more acceptable when you accomplish something really big early on, and then it's kind of like, JK, there's more, than at the very end when they're just like, boom.
Yeah, something big.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
I feel like trying to stray away a little bit from RPGs, I think when there's like a bigger bad in a game, like it can be done tastefully. So I think if we're looking at fighting games, for example, when like Akuma shows up and he takes over Bison, like he is definitely more evil, and it feels fine because like you don't have a lot of investment in that, but like him being a bigger challenge is like, okay, cool, I'm here for it, but like you still kind of treat Bison as the main bad guy, so like it's okay. Otherwise, when it is the entire game you're going through and then something happens at the end, I have no investment emotionally or physically in that enemy. I want to say Final Fantasy X does this, where
with Yevon.
It's you Yevon, and it used to be Seymour like forever, and like I just don't care, and I'm just like, oh man, like there's no build up to this, and I like, you think it would be Sin or something, and it kind of is, but it's kind of not. So like it just plays with your emotions, and it's kind of frustrating. So
it's a boss battle you can't even die in. Like,
exactly.
You have unlimited auto life on you.
Yeah, I don't know why they Americanize that too much for us, because we're babies. But yeah, it's a little frustrating because you are into it with the characters, and then it kind of doesn't deliver all the time.
What about games where bad guys can become party members? Like, is that equally good or bad compared to like the puppet non-puppet master?
It kind of works. Like I think oh my gosh, cut this out. What is the guy from Chrono Trigger that comes in your party?
Magus?
Magus. Yeah.
Magus?
I'm keeping that in.
You can. I'm looking at his little sprite, and he's clearly evil because he has like purple. So when he joins your party, it kind of makes sense, because like I think there's a bigger evil that he wants to like stop. So like you realize like, okay, we have a common goal here. So like that's kind of fun. Similar actually with Bowser in Mario RPG on the SNES. Sure. Same idea, and like it feels cool, and honestly it feels amazing to be like, wow, this bad guy, I can control them now. Like it's such a neat and novel idea.
He gets dethroned, and then you know.
I think I wouldn't even say it's necessarily an issue, just because it comes down to like gameplay mechanics. But a lot of time when that happens and the bad guy joins your party, they're significantly less powerful than they were before. And obviously they're not going to give you someone who's like OP as fuck, and so you can blast everything away. But it's always just like, come on. It's like when you get to play Sephiroth in 7, like in the flashback, and you're like a level 1 Cloud and a level 50 Sephiroth, and it's just like, okay, this is how it should be. But it obviously doesn't make sense in the context of gaming.
It kind of becomes a trope a little bit.
Yeah,
you know?
That's fair.
And I think that's like, I think it was cool back in the day. Like you said with Magus, it was cool. Or like Lunar Silver Star Story, there's a part where you get to play with the main villain and you were just destroying everything. And Dragon Quest for the main villain becomes a recruitable character if you have the DS version. Like, it was cool for a while, but now it's just kind of like, oh, this evil guy has a shred of humanity, and we don't have an edgelord on our party, so
I wonder what's gonna happen.
I'm making room, slide on over, guys.
Exactly.
So I think it, like, sometimes it's cool, but sometimes it's just a trope.
Yeah. It needs to be done tastefully.
What about vice versa when party members become bad guys?
You talked about this earlier, Patrick, right? With Wild Arms, is that right?
Suikoden?
Suikoden, my bad. Yeah. So like I don't know if I have a specific example I can think of, but you were saying like the party member joins you and then their motives change.
Yes. So like let me give an example. So I think here are some dumb examples, like Jill Valentine or Kane from Final Fantasy IV.
I see.
Because
they're brainwashed.
when it's like a brainwash thing, I think that's silly. I would rather, like, a lot of people get really upset in new games. It's almost like that whole developers don't want to do something that they think is going to piss off their audience. Like a character dying that they invested time in, or like losing them to the dark side and whatnot. But I'm like, no, throw me for a loop. Like, let me lose this character. I don't care if I gave them like 2 attack potions that made their attack power higher. Like, who cares? Like, that's a part of the fun of the game, is not knowing these things are going to happen. Then they're just brainwashed. And that's why, and like maybe they'll come back later, or maybe you can save them. Like, completely throw me for a loop. And that's why I think in Persona, or in Suikoden, like when Joey goes dark, it's cool because here you have this person that you cared about that had a change of heart. Or in Persona 3, I know, Jason, you beat Persona 3?
Yep.
Casey, did you?
Nope.
You're the head teacher of your like dorm in Persona 3 is the bad guy.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Like, and he like you don't even know it. Yeah. No, it's Shuji.
Oh, Shuji. Okay, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, not Akihiko.
Akihiko
is bad.
Akihiko's the punch guy. Yeah. Okay,
no, yeah, like, and you don't even know he's pulling your strings the entire time. He's like Giles from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, imagine if you found out that Giles 100%. Was the bad guy. Like, fuck, that would blow my mind. And I think it's one of those times where it's okay because he's been manipulating you the entire time, and that's just really cool. And you're kind of pissed off. It's like, this guy was pretty likable, but I also couldn't do a social link with him, so that explains a lot.
That explains everything. Yeah. We kind of touched on this, and we were just talking about it right now about playing as villains. But what about a game where you play as the villain completely? Whether it's open world by choice, it's something you make, it's in the game. How do you feel about just being the villain?
Well, we kind of talked about how, like, quotation marks, the villains never actually win. For the most part, like, those games are few and far between, or if they accomplish their goal, like, there's usually some resolution. But if we're talking about open world games where you get to make the choice of what's going on, I still feel like it's very curated. So I think of things like Dragon Age or Infamous, where it's either you're punching babies or not punching babies. And then like that's the extent of your choice. Or it's kind of like, or we did something like super evil and like now we're edgy evil. There's no like rhyme or reason. It's just like you're bad because you did something bad, not because you have a goal. Like you're just bad to be bad. So it doesn't really mean anything to me, and I don't really like playing as the bad guy anyway.
I think for me, the big standout here is what is it called? Is Knights of the Old Republic, the Star Wars game.
Oh yeah.
Because the whole game you're playing as the main character who has amnesia. We haven't talked about this entire episode, which I think is crazy. But they have amnesia, and eventually it comes out, spoilers, that they're like the main bad guy you've been trying to stop the entire time. And it's kind of neat because stuff has already like happened in that game that you did. Like, you're the reason why these ships were like fighting in the very first place and all this stuff. And you can do your redemption arc and like be okay, but like at the end of the day, you're still Darth Revan, and that was pretty cool. And it was one of the biggest twists I remember first discovering when I was a young Jason playing video games.
Yeah, that was kind of the first time you had something like that, because I think that came out before Dragon Age. I feel like it would have been more along the lines of Baldur's Gate or something like that, but you still didn't really see that.
Yeah, you just didn't see it. And like maybe I was just not paying attention, but I did not see it coming, and I was like, oh my god, what the heck is happening? And like, I have no good choice to do here. And it was neat. And I usually went light side anyways in that game, but if you did choose dark side and became like Sith, like, it just feels like, oh, here's the culmination of like, fuck you, I'm gonna destroy the world now. And it's just a neat twist in that game.
Okay. I think we're pretty much done with our conversation on villains, but I do have one last question for us. Why is Necron from Final Fantasy IX the best villain ever?
Oh my god. I thought this was a good
man.
question. Okay, everyone, thanks for listening. We were talking about villains, so we have a random villain at the end that showed up out of nowhere that apparently
it's me.
Exactly. We are going to take a quick break, refill our coffees and waters, and we'll be right back. Please tell us your thoughts, what you think about villains so far over on our Twitter and Instagram at RPGaymer, and leave us a review as well. We'd really appreciate it.
And we are back for our middle segment. We're gonna play a round of what you playing. Jason, what are you playing?
Oh, that was lovely. I actually am playing one of the gifts I got for Christmas. I am playing Dragon Quest Treasures on the Switch.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
It's okay. I feel like overall, like, it's growing on me, but it's kind of Monster Hunter World-ish. Sorry, you gonna ask something?
I was gonna say a kid's game.
No, it's not really a kid's game. It's approachable in like how Dragon Quest is also approachable. It's not the most complicated RPG, but in the game, you're hunting for treasure basically across multiple little like floating islands, and you can recruit monsters to join you, and it's kind of fun to see them fight battles with you, and it's all real time. So you basically can only
not turn-based.
Not turn-based. You can really only attack with your dagger, and then eventually later on use like a slingshot too, which is kind of fun. But your ally monsters do a lot of the damage, elemental attacks, things like that. And they have this neat little like scope feature where when you're close to treasure underground, they're like, hey, it's near us. So you like hunt for it and find it. Other mechanics come in.
The treasure is just like classic Dragon Quest equipment, right? It's not like you're ever really equipping your character with anything.
No,
right?
You don't equip like anything. You can level up and you just get basic stat level ups and increases. And then you get different pellets for your slingshot, which can do more damage. But yeah, when you find treasure, you're literally finding like relics of Dragon Quest past. Like I found like like the slime shield was one of them. You find like replicas of villains from previous games. It's neat. But as you get treasure, you accumulate like a total worth of treasure back at your treasure trove. And as that goes up, you can unlock different things, different zones, new monsters, yada yada, rinse and repeat. My only main gripe is that the game is single player, and I have no reason to understand why. Like it should be at least 2-player. It could be 2-player local co-op only. It doesn't need to be internet. But like it's literally Eric and Mia. Like, but you can only play as one of them. And like it just makes so much more sense to have 2 people running around that world.
Well, and are they separated, right?
They're separate. Like they play it story wise, like, oh, one of us has to stay back at our base so no one invades us, which is fine. But like, yeah, you could just be both people like over there. It's a little silly, and I feel like if the game handled it well and added that, it would be like a 8 or 9 out of 10. But now I'm just thinking it's solid, like 6, 7 out of 10. Like it's
they're not good, and they being Square Enix about just making games accessible for co-op, because I know one of the games that we were going to do on stream was Dragon Quest Heroes 2, and like it's co-opable, but you can't co-op in the sense of like how you think you'd be able to. It's after you finish a chapter, you can go back through a chapter, and it's like, why would I want to do that? Like I want to experience this with my friend as I'm actively playing the game. So like it's sad, but it doesn't surprise me that it's not co-opable.
And I'll just leave you with I'm still playing it, and as the game's going, it is getting better, which I feel like is a good thing. So about 10 or 12 hours in, so we'll keep going.
What are you playing, Casey?
I've been playing Midnight Suns. I do not really watch movies. I watch like maybe 4 movies a year. I've seen 2 Marvel movies out of how many now? 30, 40? I don't know.
There's a lot.
But yeah, there's a lot. So, but it's like one of those things I really want to get into, but there's so much of it now that I'm honestly overwhelmed.
Honestly, Disney Plus does a really good job of just like laying it all up for you.
Yeah, and that's how we were watching it. I wanted to watch it like chronologically, like I think starting with Captain America, like where he's in the World War or whatever. So we watched that, and then Miss Marvel, or I think that was the next one. But that's all I've seen. But Midnight Suns, there's just so many different characters. It's like turn-based, which games don't ever do anymore, and I really love and appreciate. And there's also cards that you use to like pick your attacks, and I like that. And it's just been really fun. I'm only like maybe like 3 or 4 hours in, but it's like fully voice acted, and that's good. And it kind of gives me almost like Dragon Age or Mass Effect vibes, with sort of the relationship building and like the kind of like friendship meters and like good and bad meters. So it's just like it's ticking a lot of boxes, and it's like introducing me to a world I want to know more about.
That's cool.
I appreciate.
I know the X-Men Legends game, the first one.
I remember playing those.
Was cool. It kind of did the same thing, because you get to play as someone who's not X-Men. A part of the universe, and then it breaks you into the universe because of that, where you get to know the X-Men, you know, and you get to see different ones, they characters they pop in and whatnot. So is this kind of the same thing where you get to play as a rando, or are you playing as a specific person?
You're called the Hunter, and you have been asleep for I think centuries, and so you knew some of the older folks. Like there's like this person called the Caretaker, who was alive when you were alive, but for the most part, like you don't know who Iron Man is, you don't know who Captain Marvel is, you don't know who Doctor Strange is. So yeah, so it's an introduction in that way.
Cool.
What about you, Patrick? What are you playing?
So I just beat Romancing Saga 3, which I don't know if you know much about Saga games, but they're not easy.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of people agree that it's probably one of the better games, if not the best in the Saga series. I know a lot of people will say it goes to Saga Frontier, but I think that's a hot topic. But I've been trying to clear things off my backlog before I'm like, okay, I'm going to get something new. And this was one that I played a while ago. And I know, Jason, this isn't really your cup of tea game, because I remember when we talked about Final Fantasy back in the day on our Final Fantasy episode, you said you don't like games where RPGs, where what you do impacts
levels you up.
Yeah, impacts how you level up. And this is that type of game. However, like it's not to the point of Final Fantasy 2 where you feel like you have to attack yourself to get hit points or something like that. I like it because it's an early idea of what an open world RPG was like. And you don't see open world turn-based RPGs. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's cool, where like you can go to all these different areas, and there are 20 different characters to recruit. And there are a lot of things that aren't explained, and you just got to figure it out yourself. And I think that's what I really appreciate about it the most, is like, here's this thing that we created. You do what you want, you figure it out, and then hopefully you can beat the final boss, because if not, oops.
Remind me again, you're probably playing it on Switch or something like that, but it's a port, right, of like SNES?
It's a remaster of the SNES game. It's kind of built in that same pixel remaster engine of the Final Fantasies and Romancing Saga 2. Like, it's not quite the same engine, but you get the feeling like these were all probably made graphically around the same time with the same intent.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's good. Like it's fun, and it's cool playing a game that never actually released in the US, and you know, has a banging soundtrack, which is awesome, and it gives you that old game vibe, because I know Casey was talking about you don't see many turn-based RPGs coming out, or ones that are worth investing in, and you know, you hear something that comes out and you try it out that's new, and you're just kind of like, do people say this is good because they have it, like we're so starved for that kind of game, or is it actually good? And that's how I feel about a couple of turn-based RPGs that have come out lately. So I'm like, I'm gonna go back and play the old ones instead.
Play the ones you like.
Yeah. And we are back for part 2 of our podcast, and this is where we play a game. If you recall back in the day when we did an episode on Final Fantasy protagonists, you will know that we actually did a NFL style draft about which characters we thought would have the best drag show. And it was a lot of fun. And if you have not heard that, you should find it, listen to it, and have a good old time. This time, instead,
Gay old time.
what we're going to do is we're going to do an all-star draft of the Real Housewives of the Mushroom Kingdom. So what we've done is we've picked 15 villains, which I will go over who they are in a moment. Hold your horses. And what we're going to do is we are going to pick which of these villains we would want to cast on a Real Housewives episode or season, and whatever shenanigans that they would get into. So rules are, on your turn, pick a character from a predetermined list and explain why you chose them to be on your season of this show. And it's obviously going to relate to them. You know, we're going to have these characters. They're going to be acting a fool with each other. It'll be meme worthy. Yeah, the villains. Jason, why don't you run through the villains for me?
I am ready to present our villains.
Present the villains.
No,
bring us the villains.
We wrote them. We have Bowser, Ganon, Sephiroth, Wesker, Dr. Robotnik, Dr. Wily, GLaDOS, M. Bison, Pyramid Head, Jesse and James, Wolf from Star Wolf, Wario, Lavos, Kefka, and this one I don't know, Melania?
Yeah.
That's from Elden Ring, right?
Elden Ring, you got it.
Our new. There you go.
You got it, dude. You got it. It was one thing we talked about, which we thought was really funny, was it was hard to pick female villains.
Yeah.
Which is something we probably... I mean, I think there are a lot, but I feel like they're very similar.
Oh, that too.
Yeah. Which was interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, so we'll recap each round. It's going to be 5 rounds of picking, and it's going to go me, then Jason, and then Casey. And since Casey has last pick, then we'll go in reverse order, and then I'll go Casey, Jason, me. That way it kind of like just balances out. So that way Casey isn't at a disadvantage each time, and Jason's in the middle, so he kind of gets like the average pick each time. Yeah, it all works out. It all works out. So for my
I have one quick clarifying question.
Do it.
Do they all live in one house, or are they all in separate houses? This matters for what I'm going to pick.
So I think technically in the Real Housewives they wouldn't, but I think it's okay if we say you want them to all live together. I know that's not like what the norm is, but I think just them being in a reality TV show together is what we're trying to...
that's the main idea.
Yeah, what we're trying to get across. So,
I've got thoughts.
You good? We're good?
I'm good.
That's good?
Start us off, sir.
Casey, you good? You good?
Yes, sir.
You good?
Yes, sir.
What's good?
Yes,
good?
sir.
All right, for my first pick for round 1, I'm going to pick Bowser.
God damn it.
Okay. I couldn't not pick Bowser. I know these first rounds are easy because you know you're going to get someone that you want, but it's not going to be so easy after this. I chose Bowser because as we have discussed about Bowser, he has a lot of different personality traits. I think that he would be kind of like the Guido of the season. I see him as being a very Jersey Shore-esque character. There would be a lot of fist pumping going on.
His hair's already kind of orange, so it works.
Really
and it's spiky.
And he wouldn't be afraid to cry. He'd be very diverse. You'd see a lot of emotions going on with Bowser. So yeah, Bowser is my first cast for my Real Housewives of the Mushroom Kingdom, which makes sense because he already lives there.
He's there.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm next, right?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is only a number 1 pick for me because I think I need to snipe it from Casey, but I'm gonna take Jesse and James.
That's fine.
Okay,
actually, you sniped that from me.
Perfect, even better.
I didn't want it.
I want Jesse and James because I'm imagining starting off this reality show, and these 2 young kids come in talking very millennial-like for some reason, and it's going to contrast with what I have planned for them. But I think they would bring a sort of energy and a sort of aloofness to the villains block they're all going to live on. And I know Casey wanted Meowth to be there too, but no Meowth this time. So it's just Jesse.
Sad.
When they're introduced to the season, would you hear
dun
dun?
Yeah, exactly. They're gonna walk in like it's RuPaul's Drag Race and be like, "We're here," and they're gonna form their R. It's gonna be perfect.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah, prepare for drama. And make it a lot, mama.
Exactly. Oh my god, it's perfect.
Okay.
Right, what you got, Casey?
What you got, Casey?
My turn. All right. I'm gonna take GLaDOS. She's one of two females on our list.
I mean, you can count Jesse.
3.
I guess. Yeah.
GLaDOS
Jesse and
is
Melania.
AI.
Mm-hmm.
But she uses she her pronouns. So
there you go.
We'll go with that.
Mm-hmm.
She's gonna be shady. She's gonna be reading everybody. She's gonna be hilarious. Her confessionals.
I was just thinking the confessional room would be funny.
I don't know if they have confessionals in the Real Housewives, but
they do now.
Our show does.
They do, exactly.
They do now. She's gonna be like memeable. It's gonna be super great. And then if I think everyone's probably gonna hate her, but they also secretly want to be her. But you just can't mention that time that her sentience got put into a potato, or she's probably gonna kill you.
I have a feeling that she would have a party, and at this party she'd be like, "Get ready, because I'm gonna have the dessert of a lifetime."
Oh my god!
And when they get there, there's no dessert, and you're just gonna see her. Imagine she has hands, just clicking her hands in the confessional, and you have to know why to know why that's funny.
The Bowser's gonna be like, "She said there was cake."
She said there was.
It's really sad.
Then she just starts singing.
Yes, exactly.
And then I go again.
Yes. Oh wait, hang on. So round 1.
Oh yes, round 1.
I took Bowser.
Mm-hmm.
Jason took Jesse and James, and Casey took GLaDOS. So Casey, start us out for round 2.
All right. I'm glad I got GLaDOS because she goes along with my second pick, who I know Patrick doesn't find him that interesting, and honestly he's not. But I think Sephiroth would have, I was going to say great, but probably not great chemistry with GLaDOS, but he would definitely fall in love with her and use all his mommy issues to maneuver her into his life. And I think he'd probably just run around and stomp and shout a lot and try to get his way. I mean, he's completely unhinged and would probably take off his shirt sometimes.
Big toddler energy.
His mom is kind of a robot too, so it kind of works out. Maybe
I'm picturing that scene where he's pulling Genova off the wall, and it's just GLaDOS.
It's just GLaDOS.
except he's pulling her into him.
Yeah, someone needs to Photoshop that. It'd be great. Okay, I go second again. So I have another clarifying question. Are we all assuming we're on the same block, or am I just recruiting these just for my team?
This is just for your team. There's no interaction.
It's 3 different seasons.
Yeah,
I know. I wanted to interact with GLaDOS, but that's okay. So my second pick doesn't change. It is going to be old man Dr. Wiley, if only for the shenanigans that I think he and Jesse and James will get up to, because they're completely opposites from one another. So I feel like if they were living in the same house or neighbors, I feel like he would be hammering away at all hours of the night until 8 p.m. when old people go to sleep. And then Jesse and James would be having their normal raves and blasting off again. And I think it would drive him crazy. And I feel like in his confessional, he would give his stereotypical evil Western style voice about how he hates these young kids and how he's going to develop some robots to kill them.
Hilarious.
It's going to happen. Mm-hmm.
Okay. For my pick, I chose Star Wolf. Or Wolf.
Nice.
And the reason why, I think Wolf would be the drama of the season.
Yes.
Oh, totally.
Am I the drama?
At any time in the house when something was going on that Wolf didn't approve of, do you know what he would say, Jason?
Can't let you do that, whoever it is.
Or not so fast.
Not so fast. Exactly.
I just feel like he would be that sniping person where would be really, really quiet and then would cause the most insidious drama possible. So I think Star Wolf is a great pick, and I'm happy that none of you picked
Solid
him.
pick.
Yeah.
Solid pick.
Okay, that's round 2. So now I have Bowser and the Star Wolf, the drama dream team. Jason has Jesse, James, and Dr. Wiley.
Yes.
Which we should have. Did we acknowledge that Jesse and James were one character? Yeah.
They're one character. Yeah.
And Casey has GLaDOS and Sephiroth. But we are back to my pick. And for my pick, I am going to take the other person who lives in the Mushroom Kingdom, and that would be Wario.
Nice.
So, I feel like if you have someone who is kind of like the Dicky energy, and then you have Bowser who's kind of like the all over the place emotionally, you need someone like Wario who's kind of like the chill one.
Mm-hmm.
Wario's like the super like just weird, like that wacky person who's on the show where you're just kind of like, oh,
what is he doing? Yeah.
Wario to me would be like, oh, what's her name, Casey, from
Snooki.
No.
What show?
From
Dragons?
no, from
Jennifer Coolidge.
Yes. Wario is the Jennifer Coolidge of the cast. Like,
my God. What a sentence.
They're trying to kill me.
Yeah, like he literally that energy so hard, just like the most obscene out there comments, and you see it, right? Like,
yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, like
Wario
is
Bowser.
the male mushroom. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The male Mario Jennifer Coolidge, like 100%.
I feel like she would be on board with playing him too. Like if she ever listened, she'd be like, "Yeah, I would do it."
Yes.
Oh my God,
that's pretty good.
Hilarious. Okay, Jason.
Okay, I'm surprised this one didn't go yet. But my third round pick, I'm gonna take Kefka. And I want Kefka because I feel like he's gonna be the complete foil to Dr. Wily's insanity. In that
He's also insane.
Completely. Well, no, but Wily is like dumb and inept at everything he does, and Kefka is, like, as we stated, a true villain who accomplishes their goal. And it's going to be the, like, you know, in the reality shows where someone will say something and then the editors put like that dunce track music over it, like, why would you say that? And it's going to cut to Kefka in a confessional, full clown makeup, just looking at the camera with his head down, like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. And like, it's about him making something, and then they're just never going to get along. I also imagine like Wily being like, oh, look at this new robot I made, it's going to cut the bread for us, and it cuts to Kefka just staring at him, like, with nothing else happening. And that's the energy I want in my house.
Okay.
I thought this through. I'm sorry.
All right, Casey, 'tis your pick.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna go with Pyramid Head. He's like the cast member who people are really unsure how he got on the show. They don't understand how he passed the psych test. He doesn't really do much. He's mostly there because there's this really weird niche of people who find him really hot. That's I think that's kind of what he would fulfill for the show. I don't think he would interact with people very much. He'd probably get into some sort of a dick measuring contest with Sephiroth because
of course
they both have their gigantic swords.
They're both overcompensating for something. Will we find out? Maybe.
Yeah. He probably has a sex tape that gets leaked during it because, I mean, what else is he there
star.
for?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, his head is obscured. You can just see his little sexy, dirty, bloody body, and you know, underneath that weird long loincloth, there's something else that's just as big as
another pyramid.
Wow.
All right, recap. We are over halfway through, so I have Bowser, Wolf, and Wario. Jason has Jesse and James, Dr. Wily and Kefka, and Casey has GLaDOS, Sephiroth, and Pyramid Head. But Casey, it's your pick again.
It is. I'm going to go with Wesker.
All right.
I think kind of going with like his first initial showing in the original Resident Evil, where he's a double
Pick
agent.
the best
I think
Wesker,
he's gonna be really good at like pretending to be on everyone's good side, but then he's like completely talking them in the confessionals. He doesn't have time for Sephiroth's mommy issues. He doesn't have time for GLaDOS's snarky bitchy comments, and I think that he will look for ways to get other people's to blow their lid and like get expelled from the show, and he'll definitely try that with Pyramid Head. And of course he's gonna have his sunglasses on all the time.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's probably always high or hungover, right?
Yeah,
because he's always wearing those glasses.
If you're taking PS1 Wesker, I think we need to clarify you need to take the bad voice acting Wesker too. So everything he says is just delivered terribly.
Yes, he's
don't
also
open
very
that
memeable.
Door. Okay.
All right, Jason.
What about you, Jason?
It's me. I'm so happy that no one has taken the people that I want. So my
what does that say about you, Jason?
That I picked the best ones and y'all suck. I am picking Lavos. I just think the hilarity of seeing I think it's 65 billion year old space entity just in its weird ass clamshell chilling in a confessional, and I imagine it's like with the long fingernails too, like looking at the camera again, just talking about how these young children have no idea what they're doing. And he's only talking about taking over the world with all these plans, but he's being foiled by Jesse and James, like failing at scraping, like, I don't know, toast and a bagel together. And I just think it would be hilarious to see that. And I'm imagining too, like, it's going to cut away, like, and here's the beautiful vista of their, like, block they live on, cul-de-sac, if you will, and it's all these nice houses, and then this giant ass shell is just where Lavos is the whole time.
She is the house.
Yeah, she is the house, exactly.
Ridiculous.
All right, Patrick. Last two.
Okay, we are getting down there. Yeah, not many people left.
I just realized I'm gonna get whoever doesn't get picked.
Yep.
Yes, you get
the scraps.
remainder.
I hope I'm prepared adequately.
I think that's what happened to me last time. I feel like
I think it was you. Yeah, you were the last one.
I think it was you.
Hey, sometimes it works out. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
it can work.
I'm going to take Dr. Robotnik.
It ends.
Yeah, we are getting there.
Yeah, okay.
I think the reoccurring theme of my cast is there's some kooky mothers. And I think that Dr. Robotnik really just takes this even
takes the proverbial cake.
I think Dr. Robotnik married rich.
Ooh.
Oh, nice.
Because everything that he's done is pretty much a failure. So he's there on this whole whim of like, yeah, but my husband's rich and I get to build all these things. But it's like, did you actually do anything successful? And it's his whole plot arc in the entire season to prove like, but I'm good enough.
I could see it. I'm just mad that you took my person, so keep going.
That's why I took him. Okay. That's 4 rounds.
4 rounds.
There's 1 round left. One more recap.
The drama.
Team Patrick, Bowser's Wolf, Wario, and Dr. Robotnik. Team Jason, Jesse and James, Dr. Wily, Kefka, and Lavos. And Team Casey, GLaDOS, Sephiroth, Pyramid Head, and Wesker. There are only 3 people left. All we have left is Ganon, which surprises me that
I'm
Ganon
surprised.
is left.
Yeah, same.
M. Bison and Melania. And for my last pick, I'm going to do you guys a solid since I'm the only one who's played this game and go ahead and take Melania.
Oh, okay. I was ready to talk
Oh,
about
that's right. Sorry, the
yeah.
only one who beat the game.
Okay.
She's the one who actually brings audiences in. She's like that, oh, this is like the 2nd or 3rd season of the show. Maybe the show's getting a little dry. She's the new drama. And it's because she's such a celebrity in her own right. Because, you know, if you follow the internet at all, everyone fanboys after her. Like, she is a...
Yeah.
There is a streamer...
I haven't played the game, even I know that.
Right. There is a streamer who literally... His name is Let Me Solo Her.
Oh, God. Right.
And the, like, literally wants you to summon her and then wants you to stand aside so he can beat her for you. And all he's wearing is, like...
The underwear or whatever.
Yeah, the underwear and a katana. So you know this is like season 3. Everyone loves the show, but we need some new drama. Tune in for that. Yeah. And it intimidates the rest of the cast because they're like, oh God, we need to shake things up. And Bowser's over here like trying to do mascara, like, I'm into drag now. And Starwolf is even edgier and Wario's even more like drunk and Jennifer Coolidge-y. Like, it just really shakes up the whole stuff. Like, they're like, oh no, we're like old and this new up and coming person is here. And it really keeps them on their toes. So
who does she think she is?
Literally. I want a Melania real bad.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, man,
Jason.
I would watch any of these shows. Okay, I feel like there's the 2 left. I'm like, there's one that's clearly Jason and one that's clearly for Casey. But I think I need to think of my ratings for this show.
You really do.
I'm gonna have to pick Ganon. So
fine.
It's okay. But I'm picking Ganon because I had a theme here, and I think the producers are thinking mostly humans, giant 65 billion year old evil shell is a monster, and Ganon is a monster. And I'm picking like the huge Ganon. Think of like Ocarina of Time, like evil Ganon.
Oh, I'm thinking Pig Boy Ganon.
Yeah, Pig Boy Ganon. I'm thinking Ganon and Lavos are gonna hook up, and like the producers are thinking this is what's gonna happen. So much so that they're banking on during what I assume they will have like a recap show later on, a reunion. There will be several children. And I think that it's because, these monsters don't procreate as fast as humans do. So they have like kids by litters, if you will. So just imagine little like pig clam creatures like crawling around their legs. And then Ganon is trying to do like double duty, like holding them and like taking care of them while Lavos is just screaming about stuff.
Ridiculous.
And that's what I imagine is going to happen.
Casey.
Who are you gonna pick?
Who you gonna pick? Who you got, buddy?
I refuse. This is a 4-person cast.
Yeah.
Okay. Haven't really. I mean, I've played Street Fighter like in the arcade, drunk, and probably once or twice as a kid. But it's like,
did we not play Street Fighter when we saw each other in Chicago?
That was his one time drunk in the arcade.
Oh, we might have in the arcade. That's like if I've played it recently, it was drunk at an arcade. It might have been that one, but we also have them here. But as I was like, I have my little list here, and I wrote his name down, and it's like GLaDOS, Sephiroth, Pyramid Head, Wesker, and Bison. And I'm like, those besides GLaDOS, they're all like kind of like hot-bodied, muscular men. So like, I feel like with the introduction of him, it's going to become almost sort of like a GLaDOS and like her sister or her like brother husbands or something. She's just like collecting all these hot men.
No one wears shirts the entire time for no apparent reason.
Yeah, I mean basically, but I mean he like Pyramid Head is also one of those people you're like, how the hell did he pass this psych test? How is he here? Because I mean, what little I know he's like absolutely crazy and like a literal sociopath. Psychopath. So
I mean, he and Bison will get along well.
Ooh, Casey, your show is it's catfishing porn, and the title of it is "My Cake Is a Lie."
Oh my god, that's disgusting.
That's fantastic,
but I love it. But I think there's going to be some weird sexual dynamic between GLaDOS and her 4 like hot men who will probably all at some point be shirtless.
100%
if they're not already.
So good. Okay, well, that's
Give us a recap.
That's the game. So, on my casting of the Real Housewives of the Mushroom Kingdom, we have Bowser, Starwolf, Wario, Dr. Robotnik, and Melania. On Jason's, you have...
Oh, I didn't write mine down. I have Jesse and James. I have Dr. Wily. I have Kefka. And... what was the next one I picked?
Lavos.
Ganon. Lavos.
Ganon and Lavos. Sorry. Yeah, those 5.
And Casey, on your show, you have...
I have GLaDOS, Sephiroth, Pyramid Head, Wesker, and M. Bison. And I think I'm going to change the name to the Real Housewives of Silent Hill.
Okay. Nice. It's very foggy over there. Yeah.
Tis. Well, that was fun, guys. That was a good one.
That's good.
I can't wait for Showtime's going to have to pick up our shows now. So
we really got to capitalize on these ideas we're giving out for free.
I know, right? They listen. They're always listening.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed our little mini villain draft there for our Real Housewives of the Mushroom Kingdom. Tell us your thoughts. Who would you pick? Who would you want to see on your show? You can talk to us on Twitter and Instagram at RPGaymer. And please don't forget, we have a Discord channel too. We're all on there talking and chatting about games and anything cat-related, apparently, with all of our pets. But we'd love to hear from you there, so go and check it out. And then lastly, if you want to support our show, you like what we're doing, you can do so at Patreon. That's going to be patreon.com/RPGaymer.
If you enjoyed listening to us today, be on the lookout for our next podcast episode, RPG Classes and Jobs, with special guest K-Bash coming up in 2 weeks. What? We appreciate you all for listening and hope you had a great time. Now go out there and get gaming.